My mission is to enhance the lives of dogs and humans alike by sharing the unique perspective of our four-legged friends and uncovering what we can learn from them. So whether you're looking to deepen your understanding of dog behavior, refine your training techniques, or simply revel in the magic of all things dogs, you're in the right place. Let's have a heart-to-heart. Welcome back. My guest today is Nelson Hodges. This is part 2 of our discussion. Nelson runs the Canine Human Relationship Institute. Nelson was a key teacher in helping me learn how to rehab fearful and feral dogs, and I've taken many courses through Canine Human Relationship Institute. In part 2, we talk more about dogs, how we can understand them better, and a little bit about my pet project, Fearful and Feral Dogs. Nelson has a unique but very applicable view about how to reach and teach dogs, and a lot of that is based on how the dogs see survival. He's the only one I know of that addresses this concept, so I hope you'll enjoy listening to Nelson and I chat about dogs and how we can reach them better.
Means you've got enough to start understanding and start testing with those dogs out there and actually learn it from the dogs then. That's what the certification means. And right now, currently, I believe there are 9 certified trainers so far. There's a few certified trainer instructors that have gone through course 6, which is you assist plus other things. I'm also evaluating constantly. We have discussions as students are working, et cetera, et cetera. Plus, there's a before and after. So you're actually there for about 12 days with me working and discussing and then analyses. And then it's a lot of work, a lot of time, and it takes years, guys. You take that course, you don't have the right questions to even take the next course for at least a minimum of 8 months. So those that have gone through multiple courses, I've got all the respect in the world for them studying and wanting to do that, because it takes 5 years or so just to go to course 5, plus the other ancillary courses. There's a number of other ones, as you know.
Yes. Well, when you say the relationship of the dog to the human, elaborate on that a little bit.
In a lot of the human world, what it's come to is to allow a dog to live with us. We want the dog to be the way we want it to be. So we put all of the psychological pressure of behavior on the dog. We expect them to understand us and our idiot human primate ways, our flailing around, our emotions, that all of a sudden we just explode into laughter or something. It makes no sense to a dog. None. And so that trust level that they want to give us, attempts to communicate to us, are completely ignored when you put the onus on the human to understand, respond, recognize, be present mentally about dogs around you. You've got an incredible relationship then with that dog, because what they can give you is well beyond what most humans think. That bond, that partnership. And by partnership, I will just say that, for instance, Bosch. Bosch is four-something-year-old German Shepherd that I've had worked with since he was 5.5 weeks old. He's become my service animal from a few injuries and medical alert stuff. And that's what I've worked with him since he was 9 months old. But I was capturing behaviors and doing things with him from the time he was 5.5, developing him into either a working dog or a service animal for these people. And then I got him to work with to develop further, and I just kept him because he's an incredible dog. Our relationship, past the point of me working with him as a puppy and protecting him and all that stuff, changed massively when he was 2.5 years old, when I recognized he was fully cogent, sentient, and looking out for me as much, probably more than I was looking out for him. So in that moment, that realization, we became equal partners. And people don't see dogs as equals. His capabilities, his senses, his understanding of things adds to. And I think most people crush dogs into being what they want rather than understanding what their capabilities are and being more like how humans and dogs, proto dogs, came together in the first place for survival purposes. That's kind of what I mean by that.
I consider myself very fortunate. I had a great foundation before I met you from a very skilled dog trainer. For me, like CHRI and the courses I went through, it deepened that, but it also allowed me to appreciate, because I understood more where the dog was coming from, why they were doing those things. I was able to appreciate those things more and actually connect with the dogs better. So it's kind of this snowball thing, I mean, one example is Tipton, and it is killing all the mice in my in my yard, right? I decided, because he was previously feral and free roaming, like this was a good way to connect with him. Actually, probably the best way to connect with him. A lot of people are like, "Ew, you do what?" Like, "Oh, ugh." And like, well, I don't actually catch them and eat them, right? I'm just moving rocks or like getting the mice out from behind the shed. But he totally understands that cooperation. He'll look to me like, "Hey, it's right here, dummy," and
Yeah, exactly.
sometimes it'll run past him and then I show him where it is. And it's like this, it's a cooperation that has allowed him to trust me, connect with me. I don't think I would have understood that one without CHRI. Right. Simple things like acknowledging what the dog's concerned about if they're barking. And it seems so simple. I think people almost think it doesn't work.
Yeah.
CHRI is a place you can explore all these ideas, right? Like we talk about this stuff. I'm sure for people that aren't into dogs, it would be absolutely not interesting.
Right.
But
yeah, it's not in their universe.
No. I know one time I was like, "Is Tipton peeing over Shiloh because Shiloh's sick?" And Tipton doesn't want the coyotes and stuff to know that she has liver disease. And
Yeah, they still know that, but they know that there's a bigger pack too.
Right. There's other healthy dogs around.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all information. I don't know if it's Angela, but somebody else. We were having other deep conversations as well at one point, and I was asking, why it wasn't, why do some people not get the depth of it? And maybe it was you, I don't even remember. But the response, which I thought was absolutely brilliant, one of the best responses ever, was because people don't think they're enough.
Oh, yeah, that was me.
That was you.
It was brilliant.
Yes, it was. Don't break your arm patting yourself on the back, but it was a brilliant response, and it was very true. They don't trust themselves. They don't trust the answer they're getting. It's beyond their scope of understanding, so it scares them that there's something that they don't know that is a completely different universe. And that's what I revel in, trying to reach people and teach them about that. Because, and another one of my thousands of sayings is, I would rather reach a dog than teach a dog, because if I reach that dog in the way it understands things, then do anything I ask of it, because it's a cooperative partner at that point.
Yeah, the teaching will be way easier.
Absolutely. It's phenomenally quick, because now you already have agreement, and the dog is already giving you things that you're unaware of if you don't know this stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's hard because if you're just someone that's interested in dogs and you start reading books and things, it's all about rewarding the dog with things. And this can be totally extrapolated into how we raise children too, because parents feel guilt because they work a lot or whatever. So they give the child things. Maybe people feel guilty about some things with their dogs. So they give them treats and toys, and everything they do is rewarded with a treat or a toy. But just kind of
Yeah.
like kids, dogs, that's really not what they need and
No,
value at their core.
it's what human adults see survival as collecting objects, property, things like that. Dogs don't. Territory is extremely important, but safety within the territory. Food, water, shelter is earned because you are successful at getting the territory and the resources within that as an individual or a pack to be able to survive at whatever level that is. When you artificially bribe the dog into what you think is it's actually what I call a force multiplier, which comes from my background of, once again, the human doesn't think they're enough. So they provide a treat or a tool or a toy or some sort of activity like play that sort of replicates what dogs do in play, but not really because humans aren't dogs. And instead of just being happy for the dog that it accomplished something. And in MRI studies and other studies, we've learned that the dog is 10 times more interested in the engagement with the human voice, all of that, than any treat, toy, play, or anything else. It's just the engagement. If you literally just go, good boy, and mean it, not because the dog did something you want, but because of accomplishment for that dog will give that to you forever now. So be careful what you say good boy or good girl about. And that's the study of this, is understanding how dogs think.
I'm just going to jump in and reiterate what Nelson just said. Dogs value the engagement, not necessarily the object you are giving them. What they really want is engagement with another being, whether dog, human, sometimes cat, horse, whatever, that engages with them in a meaningful way.
But it's stilted people's understanding of dogs being simple, moldable things into what you want. And I'm sorry, that's not a refrigerator that you plug in any part and fix the dog. A living, sentient, complex being. So that's how I handle it. That's how I take it. And that's what I try to teach. Those people who, the Institute was an organic thing, and I didn't know, frankly, from the start where it would go. And we've actually had to change out a couple of sequences because I could see the couple of courses were out of sequence in the way people needed to learn. Subject matters has changed some too. Currently happy with the result. I mean, that's been 8 years of process to get to this point for the Institute. So, I've been very honored and happy with the people who've, studied at all, taken anything, or even listened to me. There's been about 1,000 trainers over the years that have gone to a seminar or whatever you wanted to call it back then. These courses have all come out of my interactions with understanding what not just trainers, but their clients and stuff, and my own clients, thousands of clients over the years. At least it's an introduction to understanding things maybe a little differently than what they thought. And if we can help anybody understand at whatever level, that helps themselves as well as helps the dogs and their clients, obviously. So that's the purpose of the Institute, is to try to You know, I wanted to create a study, a study possibility for professional trainers to have kind of, I'll say, university level study. Whether you ever went to university or not, it doesn't matter if you've got a doctorate in something. You're going to learn something, I think, extremely helpful and useful, and I have seen the results of the people who've learned this aspects of it. But it was really to set up, there's really no university advanced study for dog trainers anywhere on earth that I know of. I know a university in New York system has a 4-year degree in dog training now, but it's not the same thing. Now, of course, Roger Abrantes has got his Ethology Institute, but it is not focused on dogs. It's total ethology of animals, period. So this is the only one that I'm aware of that focuses on dogs, on human-dog relationship. And that's the study, and learning how to understand, reach that dog and change for the better the relationship between humans and dogs.
I think too that, taking what I've learned through CHRI and then I transfer it to my clients. Mm-hmm. Most clients are very interested to learn more about their dog and why they're motivated to do things and what they're trying to say and all this kind of thing. And I think, I'm not sure, but I think there's a conception that dog training has to look a certain way. Like you have to come in and teach the dog to actually like do commands or things. But my clients are super happy to pay me to come in and educate them about their dog, teach them we definitely teach them things, particularly like leash walking and things like that. But then they can take that information and expand on it if they understand the dog. And maybe this is where, maybe it's not the best business idea, but I don't even try, and I get a ton of, people contacting me. I don't sell packages, but they're shorter, right? So usually like 3 lessons is good for a lot of dogs. There's a couple dogs that I see for longer times that are a little more challenging, but if you explain the concept to people, so it's kind of like art, right? Because I don't know if I've told you this before, but when I was learning how to paint, it was not in school. It was from a lady after I graduated. Everyone wanted to know what kind of brushes she had, what kind of paints, what color, what brand canvas that was.
Yeah.
Like they thought that if they collected those things, they could paint like her.
Yeah.
Of course, they couldn't.
No.
And what they didn't understand is the concepts behind what she did and why she did that, and how the colors played off each other and the contrast, and all these things, right? And so it's kind of like dog training too, that you can collect all the tools and tricks, but if you don't understand the concept, you're not going to be able to apply it as well, and you're certainly not going to be able to apply it to more than one dog.
Yes, absolutely.
So for clients, they're lucky. They only have one dog.
Yeah, you're right. Hopefully, I used to get multiple dog clients. Yeah, I'd walk in and there was 5 or 6 fighting German shepherds in their house. That's why they called me instead of the normal trainers. So because I'm stupid enough to walk in with them. That's kind of humans. It's the way it goes. The expectation, a lot of the business model has to do with what is projected and what people then expect. So it becomes more of a timed business model, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you understand more about actual brain and motivations and reaching that dog in a much more meaningful, deep, and faster basis, why wouldn't you? I think the other thing is in this society, modern society has become an expectation of you give it to me, but I don't go out and seek it. And so those people who receive additional education value it differently these days because it's unexpected. What they expect is the typical norm. Do this, do your work, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I'm sorry, clients don't want to work. They already have jobs. They don't want to come home and work and do your drills. There's a different way to do it, and it's actually more valuable to those people, which is why they like it. It's more meaningful for them. And if it's more meaningful and they enjoy it, guess what? They're going to do it more. They're going to study it. And that's where if you part the curtains on what a dog is for people, they go, wow, I had no idea there's a whole other universe out there. And they're going to look at that window more, and eventually they might even go out the door. And that's really what we want.
Yeah.
So
Quite a few of your, I guess, long-term students aren't dog trainers. Then we had
that's true.
come out to the Fearful Feral Dog class that just found it interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
They become fascinated with a universe they didn't know about. That's very true. There's people who they're not trainers. One person actually has a bunch of cats, and she's coming. They had dogs too, but she likes the cats. And so she's learning, and she's coming to course 4 this year. And we have one person who will become certified. She's coming to course 5 this year. She's a human psychologist therapist. And she learned to integrate what she was learning about this into her practice and uses her dogs as animal assisted therapy. And so she's found it extremely valuable even in her business and her life. So that's the stuff I love is just, all the people that I get to meet and work with. And it's just fascinating how they apply this information because nobody's going to apply it exactly like me anyway.
well, probably wouldn't want them to. It wouldn't work.
That would be scary.
You kind of have to meld it into who you are and
Yes.
do your own
Exactly. Yeah.
twist on it. And which I think is where a lot of people actually maybe causes them to be a little hesitant about signing up for the courses because they're like, oh, I can't be Nelson, right?
Oh God. Yeah, that's the thing I have hated the most over the years that I've taught is he can do that, but nobody else can. I'm going, no.
And, like maybe they can, maybe they can't, but they can certainly, I think each of us has gained kind of what we needed to, right?
Yeah.
From the course to do what we enjoy doing. And
you're smart people, you will apply it the way you want to with your personality and et cetera, et cetera. That's it. Yes.
So you're not making like little Nelsons out there, like,
oh dear God, no.
Clones.
I hope not.
So if anyone's thinking about, coming to a course, just know there's a lot of different personalities and like
very much so.
We're a pretty fun but diverse group, I would say.
Yeah, extremely. We've got people from literally all over the world that come here. Course 5 in September, we got someone coming in from Switzerland. So
I wonder who that is.
I wonder who that is, yes. Yeah. Watching her on, course 1, by the way, we offer an in-person course 1 in different locales around the country. but there's also a Zoom course one. It's similar information, similar results in understanding, but an entirely different format that actually, in some ways, I prefer teaching because of the ability to everybody video the exercises, and we get to go over each microsecond that you either reached or lost your dog. And I can point it out immediately when that happens. And that's very valuable for people to see. So, the people who've come this last month watching her work that dog that she had, which was a very fearful, difficult dog, I already know she's got it.
Yeah, I really like the online version too.
That particular course lent itself, once I changed what we were doing, lent itself better for that, frankly, for the individual. So,
Yeah, I think it's great to not only watch videos of the dog the students working with, but also all the other dogs. Because then you get, what, 5 to 6 different dogs that you can basically, like you said, you slow it down, you kind of dissect like what was going on at a speed we can actually comprehend as humans.
It's really about it's about reaching people like I've attempted to reach dogs. Just changing their perspective, changing their understanding. Think about changing perspective when you look at it from that standpoint. Yes, you can teach facts, but facts, they can be bent any way. When you take, a dog or a human, they're already this. They already have this body of information, how they respond to things, et cetera, et cetera. If you're able to reach that human or dog or any other animal in a different way, then they themselves will take that and go, okay, that changes my perspective. What about this element, and this, and this, and that? So they can entirely themselves change themselves, their understanding. They double their knowledge from an entirely different perspective they never thought about. That's really the element of what we try to do at the Relationship Institute.
I think it's important. I think it's, again, like as trainers, you don't have to go hook, line, and sinker, but if you can meld what you're already doing with some of this, then you get, to me, like the perfect balance of understanding dogs and then training techniques and how to teach people and all that. So that's obviously, I think it's great because I've been involved for so long. But
Yeah.
so the last thing I wanted to touch on was just the fearful and feral dog stuff that you do. A lot of people already know the story, but I called Nelson in a panic like 5 years ago. Like, I need help with these dogs because there was a hoarding case in New Mexico that I was asked to help with, but I quickly realized I had never seen dogs like this before, and I didn't know what to do, and I was afraid it would hurt them or cause them harm or any number of things. And so very quickly we decided to do a workshop, and you came out. And one of the things you always say is that the fearful and feral dogs have taught you more about dogs than anything else. So talk a little bit about that process and what they've taught you in a 2-minute snippet. No, I'm kidding.
So having worked with beautiful dogs, some aggressive, some not, some terrified beyond fearful, literally shut down, expecting to at any moment. If you moved from 80 feet away, if you lifted your hand like this, they'd expect to die, literally. That's how bad these were. I had to the point where, I had gotten a reputation of working with these animals to be able to reach them and gain trust and transfer that to others, because the way I do it is not just to put the burden on the animal, but I teach after a certain point of being more, I'll say dog-like in my behavior of understanding of my responses, of the calmness, the composure, the not monkey chatter, talk all the time, not getting in the dog's face, not trying to make it do things for me or wanting to love on it or any of those things that humans normally do, thinking they're actually trying to help that dog. Um, Allowing it to the time to study me and study my dogs and gain the trust. That's first aspect of it. And the trust is easily broken, especially by humans that don't understand that once they see that first step, that's only the first step, and it's a micro step. And if you skip the next steps and expect it to be something else normal, you're going to break that trust, and it'll be taking 10 times as long to ever get that back, that first step, much less others. So, explaining to people that it doesn't matter how much you feel sorry or love that dog, that's not the way it sees the universe. It's all about survival and the terror that that dog has in itself in all situations, especially around humans. And got to the point where a number of years ago, from two different locations, I got the three most beyond terror, fearful, essentially feral animals. And all three of them happened to be husky females, Siberian husky females. They were all three, like I said, one in one location that was thrown away to die on a construction site, and that got found. The other two were out of a puppy mill, probably 6, 8 years old, each out of a puppy mill in northern Missouri that got shut down, and they put down 300 of the 302 animals. And the two that got taken were from a husky rescue group up in Iowa that as soon as they got them, they went, oh my God. So they called the old IACP office, which was actually Martin Deely just answering the phone years ago. And Martin heard, Huskies fearful, and he said, here's Nelson Hodges' number, call Nelson. So they did, and I assisted them as much as I could for about 8 months on the phone. And they made a little bit of progress. And so finally I realized they're overwhelmed. They're not going to be able to help these animals. So I agreed to actually take them on as behavior cases as an experiment for me. I'm strange. And see if I could actually help those dogs to a more normal life. I will put it that way, normal with humans. There was no reason that these dogs who had never been out of a crate their entire life, abused, obviously. One was missing part of an ear. There were scar marks across faces. There's all sorts of things. No telling what happened to those poor animals. I agreed to meet them about halfway, which was just north of Joplin, Missouri. Picked them up. They were just wild animals, just like scalded cats, the way they behaved. And then the other one that was thrown away to die it took me an hour to get her from my front porch on a leash without dragging her anywhere. It took me an hour to get her to the backyard. That's not that far. And I had them all at the same time, not exactly the same month start or anything like that. Understanding them from their standpoint. So the two puppy mill dogs, I hand fed them for 4 months outside because they wouldn't even come inside. And people, well, why didn't you crate him? Why didn't you do that? Yeah, well, a dog that lived its entire life in a crate, being abused, and you put a crate, you're reminding it and keeping it in that state constantly. There was no way I was ever going to put them in a crate or a kennel. So they lived outside even when they were terrified of storms. They ran around in circles. They would not come inside for a couple of months. But I hand fed them for about 4 months and then started putting the bowl down after they stopped being terrified 80 feet away. And there's a whole story about how to do that, how to get them to you. And then, a few days later, it's up against the door, back door, and then inside the back door on the threshold, and then further inside. And, so within another week or two, they were eating in the same area with the dogs in that circle that I do in my feeding rituals because of the behavior around them, not just of the dogs, but of me and, others. About 2 years into them, one of the females who was she was always behind the other by 10 feet, watching. About 2 years into it, then at one point, I was doing something at the sink, and I had this sense, and I looked down, and she was sitting right next to me, looking out that direction. I just reached down and scratched her on the head. That was the first time she'd ever willingly came to me. And the storm happened, and she came and crawled under my legs for 2 hours. That never happened before. Anyway, they just lived out their lives with me. After 9 months for both that single dog and these dogs, I finally said, okay, there's no way they can exist anywhere else. It would tear down everything that their universe that they understood and start trusting. So I just told both groups that they're here, they're home. And they both said, thank God, So,
Yeah.
so working with those fearful and feral animals, anytime you move, anytime you make a sound, any other environmental thing that goes on, they let you know instantly. So you learn what is acceptable and what's not from an animal that's in abject terror of you and a human environment. And so you start reading how dogs interpret humans, the whole environment, etc., on all levels. And that's what helps you also with aggressive dogs, is understanding that your movement, your actions can be taken as a threat, because those fearful animals do immediately. So to what level, what aspects that humans don't even think about, can you learn from that fearful feral animal? That's really what it is studying them, studying it so hard that any of your presence, the way you breathe, where you look, anything at all, how you stand, whether your shoulders are at them or off to the side, or where your feet and knees placed, all of those things, that's all communication to them of intent. And so that's, the extreme behavior cases that I've had the opportunity to work with over the years has taught me, regardless of all the edges around. And I used to, I would take a phone call to start with a potential client that would call me, and I'd talk to them. And if they truly just needed training, or wanted that and didn't have more severe behavior things, I would send them to trainers in the area, wherever that was. It's interesting, though, the dogs, for instance, in the extremes of environment, like here in Texas, where it's 110 or it's 3 below, which it does here in North Texas area, the dogs are hardier environmentally than places that have much, Everybody in LA thought it 90 degrees was just horrible, and their dogs were sitting around puffing and panting. I'm going, what a bunch of wusses.
I mean, to me, it's like they put a magnifying glass on everything you do and the mistakes, of course, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
it
and
is.
I mean, it's like stripped down. So you have a dog and and that's it. And how can you can't use food, you can't use toys, you can't use,
They don't want to take anything.
they don't
Sure,
want, they don't want you there. They don't want
exactly.
anything to do with you. So how can you, and this is where it kind of goes back to, are humans enough, right? Because yes, we are, because we're enough to these feral animals. I mean, and I'm still learning. I'm not like pretending to be any kind of like I know it all, but what I've learned over the past 5 years is that yes, they really do want to be with you, most of them. I'd say 98%. After you break the ice and they learn they can trust you, they actually do. There's that gene in dogs that make them the friendly gene.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's the genetics of, again, a social animal. They know survival is better with others rather than by themselves.
yeah, it's like raw, right? It's that's
Yeah.
all you got. It's and how can you change your behavior, connect with the dog to convince them to just take a little chance on you in a way?
Yeah.
Uh,
It's a long process. Most people don't want to take that long process. But you see, that's the in slow, out fast aspect. You see that first step takes that long. And they scare themselves when they take that first step. So then they have to kind of come back up to it. And it's a micro step. People, they don't revel in that accomplishment, not because you did it, because the dog was able to change. Why would that animal ever trust a human? And that to me is a celebratory point. But you can't go scare
no,
you don't want the dog
you
on.
can't be like, yes, the dog will go, oh no.
Trust you ever again. Yes. So, and then that next step is way down the line again, and then another one, and it gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So that long time, and then it starts doing this because all this accumulation of behavior, understanding, etc., and trust. If you don't do something to make it go back to base level again, that's that's the key, guys. That's really the key is understanding how to reach that dog, whatever that behavior is, how to reach that dog and not break trust to a level. Humans are always going to do something stupid and break trust to some level. But you don't want to just absolutely terrorize the dog or make it distrust you, regardless of what level of behavior it is. It doesn't matter if it's fearful, aggressive, or anything, any of these other areas, or just a normal in the center, goofy lab or something. And so what you're looking for is the change of more rapid change of testing and behavior and trust levels. That's what you're looking for. And then that's the path the dog learns, and you want to match that. So if you're not understanding that dog, you're not going to reach that dog. You're not going to help that dog that much.
I think working with these dogs has helped me train all dogs. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, I already help fearful dogs, or I don't work with those dogs. So I'm trying to say, like, yeah, there is value in
Yeah.
learning about these dogs. I mean, these are the dogs that they're more like dogs without human intervention.
Yeah.
And to see like how smart they are and how creative and all kinds of things that they are. Again, it kind of it's built that appreciation for dogs.
Yeah. So years ago, some of the people in Canada, the trainers that I worked with and taught, they would go up to the Northern Territories every once in a while. A few of them would go up to the Northern Territories and work with the res dogs.
Yeah.
And so we'd have long conversations before they went on what to do, what not to do, et cetera, because working with essentially a wild animal, but that hangs around human existence, that's what you're working with. And those are primal, instinctual, ancient breed animals. That's where huskies came from in the first place. Which is why I used to use them all the time in classes, was because, I was going to mention. So remember, in each one of our fearful feral dog years, there'd always be somebody the first day. Yeah, I work with feral and fearful dogs and all that stuff. And then by the second day, they're going, I just thought I was working with fearful feral dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different level.
Well, it's kind of like when I first saw him, I'm like, oh, I've never seen this before. And I just happen to live in New Mexico, which has like a surplus of these dogs. I mean, it's just kind of coincidence. So I get a lot of practice, is what I tell people.
I find that it isn't that I've just learned so much more about dogs from fearful feral animals, dogs. It's that, like you said, it's a multiplication factor of 100-fold of every little tiny nuance of what you do and how you do it and when you do it. Timing is incredibly important, because you start learning when the brain transitions from one state of mind to another. What is that decision point? What causes that decision point to change? And in the CHRI live talks, that subscription thing, I talked about transitions, and I talked about thresholds. Those massively important to understand, because those points are decision points when the brain changes. If anything is static or stable, there's no need to change your mind. It's when a transition happens, that's the point. And when dogs do that, it's because of environmental things. An environment can be a change of wind. It can be the sun goes behind a cloud. It can be a sound 4 miles away. It can be a smell. You learn to read that stuff with those extremely sensitive. Survival depends upon their understanding of everything around them, fearful animals. I would highly recommend anybody, first of all, take the online course because it'll certainly open your mind up to that, and learn about fearful and feral animals beyond what you think it is, guys. Seriously. You said something earlier about not being know-it-all. Neither am I. If you think you know it all, then there's nothing left. So just die. Instead,
There's no point going forward. You know it
yeah,
all.
that's how much everybody knows about whatever. There's a universe out there. If you aren't inspired to have a voracious appetite for knowledge, that's where you're going to get skill, knowledge, understanding. You have to have that constant appetite, studying everything all the time. You train your brain to do that. It isn't tiring, it's invigorating.
Yes, and these dogs will keep you learning, because
Yes, they will.
and it's interesting, people have found me that have fearful and feral dogs. So if anyone's interested, I mean, I want to say, like, yes, there is a people that need that help.
Yeah.
I think also a lot of people want to do a good deed. Like, I just had a rescue contact me that took 12 dogs from Israel that were street dogs. And they didn't really know what they were getting into. now they know because, everything that would work with a more typical dog has not worked with these guys. So I would say if you do have one of these dogs or a severely fearful dog, reach out because there is hope. I mean, they were at the point where they felt like there was no hope for these dogs because there isn't information out there of how to help them. It's kind of nice that they managed to find me and I can.
Yeah, you're teaching it as a specific area subject with dogs. It's one of many areas that I tried to teach to people. So I love that you're focused on that because honestly, I have never seen anyone else be interested in focus on it or even see value in working with those animals. I think once again, they don't understand them. It takes too long is the way people think about it. And that's a shame because once those dogs they give you that trust, I can't tell you, I'll use a human word for it. They are appreciative beyond belief, truly appreciative of it.
Yeah, they're some of the best dogs. I mean,
Yeah.
they have their little behavior quirks, like Tipton still, he thinks
So do I.
still depends on, eating random pieces of paper sometimes or whatever. But
Yeah.
people think it takes a long time, but if you know how to help them, it doesn't
Yeah.
take as long as one might think.
Right. It's like the one dog that I mentioned before that was thrown away to die. Tried to get her on a leash about a month in. She did was shut down and then I was a little upset at myself and go, well, what am I not getting here? And then I remembered a photo they sent of her to me before I got her that was uh, collars and chains. She had two different chains hanging off of her collar as she's standing there basically ready to die, skin and bones, and you know, basically threw her away. And then I went, idiot, that anything around the neck then means don't move or you'll get beaten and you'll die. So I actually put a harness on her and taught her that, and I hooked it back at the harness back behind and taught her that center of back, this whole thing over here means lift up. Now let's move forward. And so we worked with that for about a month. And then I put a leash back on the collar and went back and forth so that she learned what that meant, that it's the same thing. And then I took the harness off of her about a month later and she would walk on leash then. It's the process of figuring things out. That's what's fascinating.
The problem solving.
It is all about problem solving. That's really there's plenty of, but problem solvers will always have jobs because there's so many problem creators on earth. Vastly more than problem solvers. So
True.
there you go.
All right. So last question, which I ask everyone is, because this is the name of my podcast, is what have dogs taught you?
Oh,
overwhelming question.
Wow. What have dogs taught me? History, understanding of what language actually means, what sociality behaviors are from a different perspective, understanding the depth of, frankly, neurobiology, thought, language, behaviors. It could go on and on. The cooperative nature of a truly cooperative experience where agreement, not force, is everything. Understanding that sometimes antisocial behavior is actually prosocial because you have to disagree and eliminate an issue or a problem. And sometimes that antisocial doesn't mean you attack or kill or anything else. It simply means you oppose that. To what level and to what extent? Just enough and no more, because if you do it more, you break trust. So it's about gaining trust by agreement or disagreement. And so working with these guys has helped me in or with consulting, we'll say, and around the world and other things. Work with clients of mine, how to reach them, whether it was in race driving training or martial arts or architecture or dogs or whatever else. It's the way your brain focuses. Here's a different species of animal that if you can reach them, it teaches you lessons to reach others. So you're experimenting around with how to reach that individual rather than to put your hands on them.
I don't know if it's age or some of these lessons, but yeah, I have a less of a need to try and control everything and try and meet that person where they are.
Yeah.
Dog training clients usually, or adopters or whatever, and try and sneak up from them from behind and bring them my way.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's really the difference. Humans want to control outcome. I'd rather have cooperation, an agreeable cooperation. It's faster, it's easier, and you learn who and what that person, dog, etc. is. And everybody just wants to get along. But what does that mean to that other entity? Because getting along means safety, it means survival. So it all goes back to how that individual sees survival. Humans see survival in our society in first world countries as what car we drive and what shoes do you put on today and what color shirt and all those things. That's how we see survival, because we want to be accepted by or shock people with what we do to be noticed. That's how we see survival anymore. It's not, is that bear going to come down the mountain and eat me today? Yeah, but dogs don't care what color shoes you wear. And I've never met, as many letters as I have behind my name, I've never met a dog or frankly a human that cares. That's not the reason that I've got those letters.
No, the dogs don't go, oh, letters, we better listen to him.
Ooh.
He knows what he's doing. Ooh, look at those fancy shoes. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he sure can drive that car.
Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Thank you for both asking me and the honor of being on here with you.
Always a pleasure. I always learn something too. I learned about the aggressive duck today.
There you go. There you go.
I want to thank Nelson Hodges for being my guest for not one, but two podcasts. I would encourage everyone to look up the Canine Human Relationship Institute at chrinstitute.com. For anyone interested, we will be doing the Fearful Feral Dog Workshop in New Mexico again at the end of May in 2025. Please look for more information about that coming soon. Please join me next time. I will be interviewing a couple more people. Can't say which one I'm going to do first right now, but it will prove to be interesting, and it will be trainers that have had a ton of experience working with dogs. Thanks for listening in. Have a great day.